Live. Oh yeah. We'll give it a few minutes, let people kind of get in here. They just non-game day weekend sessions opens up at 4, so they're just opening up. So if anybody's around downtown, it's a good time to pop in. They're not too busy yet. Not too busy yet. They got all the Halloween decor going on back there. Looks good. Cole's going to join us hopefully in just a little bit. He's traveling. I can't remember where he's going, but he's going to try to pop on a little bit. We'll talk some football, get your questions in. We'll answer as many questions as we can. We'll go from 4 to 5 talking some Auburn football. Give it a few more minutes, let some people pop in, shoot your questions in. Zach can get them to me. And we'll get to it in just a second. Here live at Session Cocktail, Magnolia Avenue, downtown Auburn. By the way, they do a cocktail for the calls every month. They do a cocktail for calls. So a part of the proceeds for a specific cocktail goes towards a different cause every month. This month, they've got going on is the Down South Cancer Foundation. It's called a Down South Delight. It's a cocktail made with tequila, lime, strawberry, and passion fruit. And the Down South Cancer Foundation is a mission to ensure that every individual battling cancer has access to the essential resources needed to maintain their quality of life. They're focused on providing access to self-image and nutritional products, understanding that these elements are crucial for both physical and emotional well-being during treatment. So cool calls. Come down here to Session the whole month of October. The Down South Delight, order that. Part of the proceeds go to the Down South Cancer Foundation. It's a really cool thing that that Session does is giving away some proceeds to a good cause. All right, we'll have Cole join us here in a little bit as everybody kind of gets rolling. Auburn, Georgia. I want some score predictions. I want to hear what people think. Zach will push those through. I want to see score predictions. I want some thoughts, some over/under thoughts. I'm not sure where Auburn fans are on this. I think some people think Auburn might go in there and cover. I think some people probably think they're going to get blown out. I'm really curious to sort of see where everybody's at. And so it's going to be, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. 2:30 ABC. I'm so used to saying CBS. 2:30 ABC on Saturday. Should be a good one. By the way, go to auburnlive.com and check out. I did an interview with Brett Whiteside, who's the executive director of On to Victory. I talked to him about obviously their current campaign to try to raise $1 million by December. And we also talked a little bit of hoops, a little bit of football recruiting, things like that. So go check that out. That's a free story at auburnlive.com, interview and all that good stuff. Go check that out when you can. Brady, what you got going? If Auburn goes 3-9 and this year's recruiting class implodes, wow, that is the worst case scenario. And key guys from last year's class into the portal. Oh boy, that's just everything going wrong. I don't look honestly. I mean, I don't foresee any of that happening, and I get that it's just a hypothetical, but I don't see any of that happening. First of all, they're not going to go 3-9. I mean, could they go 4-8? I mean, maybe. I think worst case they'll go 5-7. I think they'll sneak up and get something, but honestly. Honestly, I don't necessarily think the class will implode. I mean, even 3-9, that's pretty dire. And you might lose a few, but in this day and age with NIL, it just, to me, that gives you an added ability to keep the class together because it's a factor that has nothing to do with winning and losing. And so Auburn's, is doing a good job in that department. So like I still think that they could keep a lot of the class together, and Hugh Freeze is such a good salesperson that I still think they keep a lot of the class together. Now you're talking about the interesting thing in this scenario would be the portal. I think Auburn could go 4-8, even 5-7, which would be a terrible year. And I think they could keep the majority of the class together. I don't know. Would there be a few defectors? Probably. Does it, some guys maybe that you're trying to get, I could see them losing a few, but I think they could keep a lot of the class together almost no matter what they do. Because of Hugh Freeze's ability to sell because of NIL. I think the bigger question is guys that they just signed. if they go 4-8, and you've got guys that came in that redshirted that didn't play, that's more interesting to me. I think there's more of a likelihood that you've got to appease those guys who've been in the program. They're not happy with their playing time. And on top of that, you went 4-8. That would worry me more than almost losing the players in your current class. Because the guys in the current class, they all think that they're the difference maker. Guys that are here, they're thinking, okay, that's 1 year down, and I didn't do anything, and we didn't make a bowl. Those guys are going to be, to me, a little more jittery. And so I would be more worried about holding on to those guys if the season goes poorly. Having said all that, I don't see any scenario where Hugh Freeze isn't here next year. I mean, even the way you described it, 3-9, class implodes. That'd be about the way you described it is absolute worst case scenario, and I don't see it happen. I mean, 3-9, you lose 6 guys from the current class, your class plummets to 15th in the country, and then you lose 3, 4, 5 impact freshmen. Yeah, that would be like really, really alarming. But even then, I'm just not sure that Freeze isn't here. Like, that would be really, really bad. I don't know what that would feel like. You'd have to get in that moment to know what that would feel like, but I don't see any of that happening. I think internally they're doing all the right things recruiting wise. They just got to win games. Byron says Kirby Smart said no one has stopped Auburn's offense. Turnovers are the only thing that stopped them. What do you think? Well, first of all, Kirby has been really complimentary of Auburn. Even last year, off season, all he did was talk about how great Jordan Hare Stadium was. Like, Kirby's doing his job, which is to make sure that people don't look at Auburn as a pushover. Like, no, this Auburn team's good, and he's saying that to his team too. So I think, first of all, keep in mind that he's preaching to not overlook Auburn, but there's some truth to it. There is. I mean, look, top 25 nationally in yards per game, yards per play. They're top 25 nationally in 10-plus yard play. No, I think they're top 35 nationally in 10-plus yard plays, and they're top 25 nationally in 20-plus, 30-plus, 40-plus yard plays. They're one of the better teams in the league in rushing yards per carry. Like, there's a bunch of good stuff to point to when it comes to this offense. But unfortunately, turnovers and time of possession, which kind of go hand in hand. If you're going to turn it over, you're not going to hold on to the ball very long. And so those two things are going to negate anything else you're doing positively. So, like, yeah, there's some really good things. Look, I wrote yesterday in the predictions and prognostications, kind of our opinions and stuff. Look at Peyton Thorne. Despite what people think of Peyton Thorne and how they think he's playing, he's 4th in the conference in passing yards per game. He's I think 6th in quarterback rating. And if you just took away the 2 Cam Coleman drops and you took away the Keandre Lambert-Smith wrong route against Cal, his touchdown interception ratio is 10-3. That's the same as Carson Beck's. Like, I mean, he's not playing that poorly. I really don't think that. If you really are really fair about Peyton Thorne's play and look at the picks, he needs to improve his decision making. He needs to process things quicker. He needs to know when to run and when to try to force it. I think there's sometimes where he forces it, and he needs to trust his legs and use that. If he could get that balance down better of don't think you have to make the play. I think he's been under pressure a little bit last year and this year. I just wonder if Peyton feels like he was brought in to be this portal quarterback, to be the savior. And there's just times where I feel like if he is feeling that pressure to have to make a throw and have to force the ball into a window, and he doesn't need to do that. If it's not there, trust your legs. And then Hugh Freeze could help him a little bit. Maybe take a few pass attachments off, take a few options away at times, let him make some easier reads. And if it's not there, run. There's a way to make Peyton Thorne a really good quarterback. Maybe they're starting to find that out. But, yeah, I mean, it's not a crazy thought for what Kirby's saying. I mean, Oklahoma didn't stop him. Arkansas didn't stop him. Cal, I'd have to go back and look at the Cal game. I thought Cal played pretty hard, pretty physical. But even in that game, Auburn I'd have to go back and look at total yards for that game. I don't think they got to 400 in that game. I thought Cal did a decent job, but still Auburn moved the ball a little bit in that game. But for sure, the last 2 games, the last 2 losses, Auburn's absolutely moved the ball. Those defenses didn't stop Auburn. I mean, they put up yards, and all that, and turnovers just killed them. They should have had easy 30-plus points in both those games to me. So I think that's fair from Byron. I think that's a fair point. William, what you got? How realistic are our chances of Alford and the 5-star offensive lineman? I think very, very good. Listen, Jeffrey Lee and Cole Pinkston do an awesome job of covering recruiting. And so I kind of leave a lot of the prognostications to them. Obviously, I talk to people and I hear things. I don't ever want to contradict what those guys do. But I mean, I've told our board for weeks that I think Alford will end up at Auburn. Now, is that imminent? No. Is that a done deal? No, not at all. But I do like what Auburn's doing and where they position themselves with him. And I think in the end, that they'll get him to flip. I don't think it'll be until the end, though. I don't think it's going to be something that happens tomorrow. Like, I think this is going to be a thing that happens very late in the process. Babaloa, a lot less confidence about. Auburn's in it. Getting Deuce Knight was massive. Without Deuce Knight, Auburn doesn't get Babaloa. Those two guys talk a lot. And the only way Auburn was being considered is if they had a quarterback, and that's Deuce Knight. So getting Deuce gives you a legitimate shot for Babaloa. You might, I don't want to say they're the favorite. Michigan's up there. Tennessee's maybe a sneaky pick there. But Auburn's absolutely in it. But you weren't in it without Deuce. And so, yeah, Auburn's got a good shot at both those guys. Absolutely. And even Cole's talked about Malachi Goodman, who looks like Penn State, all the way. I mean, I think Auburn has shown they're going to continue to recruit guys. And so, but yeah, I think Alford, if I had to place a bet right now, I would bet Auburn lands him. But a long way to go with that one. But Babaloa, yeah, getting Deuce was huge in that recruitment. Huge, really big. Here live at Session Cocktail downtown Auburn, right here on Magnolia Avenue. Come check them out. The Great Old Fashions Happy Hour 4 to 7. And they also open on Sundays. So if you're ever here for games, Sunday, 12 to 5 on Sundays, they're wide open. And so game days, it's a great time to come and come check them out, watch some NFL football, as well as Auburn prepares for Georgia tomorrow. We all predicted, listen, Jeffrey, Cole, and I all predicted Georgia to win. We were all similar in our thoughts, 30, like a 34-17 kind of game. I watched some other predictions for the games that had Auburn not covering. I really went back and forth on it. I would love to know what people think in terms of score predictions and thoughts. I could go both ways. I think Auburn is making progress on the field. I think the Oklahoma game showed that. But it's also their first road game of the season. We have no idea how they're going to react. You don't ever quite know. This team's already been through a lot for the first 5 games. Maybe they go out there and they get away from the pressure of playing at home and they play well and they focus. But I could also see a scenario where Georgia comes in ticked off about how they played against Alabama and is fired up and all that talent shows and they jump on Auburn. I mean, I remember last year, Auburn bounced around, right? Auburn, you had the Cal game that Auburn squeaked out. You had the Texas A&M game on the road that they lost, that they looked terrible in. Auburn did. And then what did it do? Auburn came back home last year, played Georgia off their feet, almost won that game. Similar to what Auburn did last week against a ranked Oklahoma team. They went through some bumps. They came home. They played Oklahoma off their feet. Maybe should have won the game, but they didn't. And then 2 weeks later, after the Georgia game, you're thinking last year, you're thinking Auburn, okay, the Cal game, the A&M game were great. You're thinking the Georgia game, okay, they figured some things out. And then 2 weeks later, they have a bye week. And then 2 weeks later, they go to LSU and they get absolutely throttled in their second road game of the season. That worries me a little bit about this team. I think they figured some things out last week. I thought they looked better against Oklahoma. But this is their first real road test. And then I do think there's a little bit of chance, a little bit of concern about they go there, have a really bad start, and get throttled. Now, the good thing is Georgia hasn't gotten off to a good start. So if Auburn can come out there and get off to a good start, Georgia hasn't. That would be really, really massive. But if you let Georgia come out there and hop on you early, that's not going to be good. Looks like Cole has joined us.
What's up? Can you hear me?
Where are you going, Cole?
Well, check this out. So I had to leave early because I was going to try to make it out to see Deuce play tonight. And then I found out about, I don't know, an hour into the drive that Deuce is not playing tonight. So made a little U-turn, and I'm going to Saraland. So we're going to go see Antonio Coleman tonight.
Yeah. By the way, I can't hear you, but it doesn't matter. I can see your mouth moving. So whenever you stop talking, I'll know you're done. I'll know you're done. Okay. So we're sitting there talking. Somebody asked earlier about like worst case scenarios. By the way, so I just got a recruiting question. Somebody asked me legit chances for Alford and Babaloa, and I said, I told the board I think Auburn's going to get Alford in the end. That's just my opinion, but I think in the end they'll get it done. Babaloa maybe, I don't know, but I told them, I said, you've talked about it, how big getting Deuce was for Babaloa. Like without Deuce, Babaloa is kind of a non-starter. But somebody asked about Alford and Babaloa. What do you think about those two?
Yeah, Alford, man, for a while, and I think you were kind of hearing the same thing. Jeffrey was too, that things were trending in the right direction, probably around Big Cat. I think that's when things started trending again for Auburn. He was there. Every time I've ever seen him, I've seen him with his girlfriend, and somebody brought that up on the show, on the call-in show the other night, and I always thought that could be something. I think she's sticking around the state of Alabama. I don't know where she goes to school exactly, maybe Alabama, but he's committed to Ohio State, man. I think Auburn's got a great chance at this point. I would have said good chance about a month ago. As of today, I say great chance and maybe moving up a little bit. Babalola is pretty much status quo. I haven't gotten much new information there. I don't think he has any new information to tell anybody. I think he's still in the same place trying to figure it out. So Auburn, Michigan, Stanford, those are the three. With Auburn and Michigan, I feel like the top two.
I see you got your rain jacket on. You preparing for some rain, or is it just going to be, is that just kind of like your go-to? I haven't even looked at the weather. Is it a chance we get into that part of the season?
It's been raining down like in the Mobile area all day, and I'm getting rained on just a little bit right now. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Auburn, Georgia. Any vibes changed for you since our modcast, since our predictions? Anything changed with you in terms of how you feel? We see Smell London out for Georgia. That's big. He was out as of Thursday night. That's a big, that's a fantastic player. London Humphreys, the receiver for Georgia, is now probable. He went from out to probable, by the way, in one day. So we got to work on these injury reports. Maybe go out to questionable. He went from totally out to probable in a day. Auburn, I think Auburn's in good shape. They've got a handful of guys that are probable. I think some of that's probably just a real physical game against Oklahoma. And what I've noticed about Auburn's injury report so far is they kind of they go from questionable to probable, and then they'll be ready to play Saturday. They kind of just tick them up just to make sure that they're on there. But any vibes have changed? Anything changed with you about how you're viewing this game in the last 24, 48 hours?
No, I don't think anything's changed. I talked to Palmer Thoms, I think, or Toms, however you say his name, that covers our Georgia site. Talked to him a good bit, asked him some questions. He's actually, it's funny, I wrote, if I were Georgia on one of my articles this week, what would I see from Auburn? And he kind of reflected what I was talking about. Is like, Keandre Lambert-Smith is kind of a threat, dude. Like, he's pretty good. Cam Coleman is highly capable of making big plays against a secondary that got torched against Alabama for nearly 400 yards. So it's, they're looking at Auburn's passing game getting better and going, well, they might have an actual better chance than they did last year. And last year they almost beat them. So it's interesting. Of course, I'm not predicting a win for Auburn by any means, but could this be close in the second half? I wouldn't rule that out. I think it could be. I think Auburn's got enough finally to do that. To me, that hadn't been the issue in these games. I think Auburn's got as much or more talent than the teams they played. They just haven't gotten it together from a situational aspect. That's the biggest problem. And they're going to be in some situations in this game. And I think that's why they're going to lose, because they haven't handled those tough situations, pressure situations that well. But as far as being in the game, I don't see a reason why they wouldn't be in the game.
Yeah, I just keep going back and forth. I don't know if it's a little bit of looking for the bright spot and thinking that they're going to build on the Oklahoma game and go play well. I would probably say, you watch Georgia struggle for at least a half against Alabama, and you're like, oh, okay, but that's Alabama's loaded. So let's not say, well, because Alabama did something, Auburn can go do something. I wouldn't say that. The other thing, Alabama only scored 3 points the last 3 quarters against Georgia. I mean, Georgia got blitzed early, but they settled down. And I mean, Alabama, other than the safety, they only kicked a field goal the last 3 quarters against that Georgia defense. I wrote a little bit about my main concern. Georgia statistically is absolutely middle of the road so far in the SEC, like about 10 different important categories. Now, they've played a good schedule, played Clemson, Kentucky, Alabama. They've probably played the hardest schedule so far. But one thing they have done well is they have limited big plays. Outside of Bama, they gave up a few, but Auburn's not Bama. Other than that, they really don't give up some big stuff. And that's the one thing Auburn has going for it. And I am a little concerned about if Auburn has a game where they don't have some big plays, these big pass plays downfield, things like that. They certainly haven't shown that they can be consistent enough to move the ball. And so that worries me a little bit, going against the defense that I think might be able to really limit your big plays. I just don't know if Auburn can sustain enough. I mean, I thought they'd get to 20, but I'm not even sure. I think it might take a turnover or two to even get there the more I think about it. I just don't think Georgia's going to make them work for everything. And I think Auburn will have a pretty good game plan, but I just don't know if they can sustain enough to even get to 17 or 20 on their own.
Well, interestingly enough, on the flip side from the passing game, which we're talking about, explosive plays, a year ago, I thought Georgia's front seven was maybe even a little bit stronger than it is now, and now they're down Smile Munden, so that hurts a little bit. Christian Miller is a guy that I think was hurt for them, is coming back off an injury. Michael Williams is coming off of injury, hadn't been playing as much. Jordan Hall, that's another guy on their front seven that's coming back this week and has played limited snaps. So you look back a year ago, Auburn ran for over 200 yards on them. Peyton Thorne almost had 100 yards rushing against Georgia last year. There's something there. I mean, if I'm Auburn, I'm going back to that tape and going, now what exactly did we do that got them off balance so much in the run game? I would look back at some of that and do that again. I think they do it pretty much anyway. That's their rush offense. That's the way they do it. But still, there's something to it. The way they set them up, the way they hit the perimeters, all that kind of stuff. I think it's there for the taking against Georgia. It's like Luke Deal said the other day. He was like, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if we're going against the number one rush defense in the country. We have a good enough rush offense to do it against anybody. We don't just not call it. That's our identity. He thinks that's their identity. I don't know if that's been their identity yet. But in a game like this, do they turn to it more and make it their identity? I think that would bode well for them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It'll be interesting first couple of quarters. We'll see if Auburn can kind of get off to a decent start, hang in there, try to get a little confidence early. Don't come out and get blitzed early. I mean, the other thing is if they get down 14-0, everything about what they want to do game plan wise is out the window. If they want to run the ball, shorten the game, all that stuff, if they get down 14-0, they're going to be in trouble in that regard. All right, so you're going to see Antonio Coleman. What do you want to see from him? You obviously haven't seen him yet. He's a guy that's kind of, I mean, he caused such a stir, right? Flipping back and forth. And then haven't heard much about him since. I guess obviously Auburn is continuing to recruit and try to build to their class. But he seems like everything's solid with him and his commitment to Auburn. But what do you maybe hoping to see from him tonight?
Yeah, well, first of all, I saw some people on the board asking about him and if he's been to an Auburn game. If I remember correctly, he's been to all of the home games so far besides one. But he usually gets in late, like after I've already gone up to the press box. He gets in like midway through the first quarter every week. So he has been going to Auburn games. That's number one. Number two, he's To me, he's a difference maker. He's a guy that can come in and be an early playing time guy for Auburn next year. He's explosive. Not really the guy you want to put on at the nose guard, but the 3 technique, he can, jump the gap. He's got one of the best get-offs in the class I've seen. So I want to see that tonight. They're playing a team that's a little bit down, that's 0-5 in Baldwin County, so he'll have a chance to make some big plays. Another guy I want to see tonight is Deshaun Spencer, who we don't talk much about at all. 2026 receiver that's been at Auburn for 3 games this year, or 2 games. I think Auburn's actually looking at him. He's a little small, but that dude is a baller. He can play, and I want to see how good he is tonight. I think if he has a good enough season, he might actually be somebody to monitor for Auburn and Auburn fans moving forward. So those 2 guys are the ones I want to see.
Yeah. Well, it was a big week. Getting Deuce night was huge. We'll see kind of where Auburn goes next in the recruiting thing. But that Deuce night, what's funny about that is, we thought Deuce night might flip over a month ago, 6 weeks ago, in August. We thought he might flip. And now the way things have worked out, you're probably thankful he did it now, because if this program needed a shot in the arm, it was now, not in August. And so it's funny how it worked out that way, but certainly a shot in the arm now. Any chance Deuce's? I think when you go through what Deuce did, he's 100% now. I don't really see. We talked about Ole Miss a little bit. I don't know if you guys have talked about it on the board, but if Ole Miss is a threat to Notre Dame, are they a threat to Auburn, or do you think this thing is locked up?
Yeah, it's worth monitoring those schools and seeing what they do from here. But at the same time, it's like, all this time he could have pulled the trigger. He finally does it. I don't think he did it for no reason. I think it was a calculated decision, something that he thought about for a while and took his time on, and knew he did not have a deadline with necessarily, other than obviously December. But he took his time with it, wanted to make the right decision, and at the end of the day, it was Auburn. And I think it's going to be really, really difficult for anybody to flip him now. I would say that he's pretty much locked in. I would be surprised if not. I'll put it that way. And I've been surprised before, but I think he's pretty locked in. I don't see how he doesn't stick with Auburn after this.
Well, it was a big one. Be safe driving on your way, and then we'll see everybody on the Cole will be running the live thread tomorrow 2:30. We'll see how that thing goes. We'll have post game coverage, all that good stuff. But be safe. Everybody go and check out the site tonight, tomorrow morning, and they'll get some Antonio Coleman coverage from Cole. Man, appreciate Cole joining us.
Yeah. Also, tomorrow you've got Usman Chroma making a decision. We'll see what happens there. I still have a pick in for Auburn, which is going against the grain right now, but gonna have to monitor that all the way up to the announcement. Right now, I have not found a reason to change it, so we're gonna roll with that for the moment. Halftime nuggets tonight during the Saraland thread, so check it out.
Yeah. All right, dude. Be safe.
All right. See ya.
All right, cool. Pinkston, appreciate him joining us. What you got, Rand? If Auburn by some miracle upsets Georgia, how big would that be? The season's still disappointing. Oh my gosh! It would turn the whole season around. If you beat Georgia, you can't erase Cal, Arkansas, Oklahoma losses. It is what it is. I think most people would have taken 4-1. Oklahoma was always a toss-up. I thought Auburn could win the game. I picked Auburn preseason to beat Oklahoma in a very, very tight game. But if you told people Auburn was 4-1 and they have a loss to Oklahoma, most fans would be like, "That's not the end of the world. Okay, that's not a big deal." It's the Cal and Arkansas games. You can't erase this. You beat Georgia. I won't say you erase, because you still have 3 losses and you're still just 3-3. But you win this game on the road against Georgia, a team that has owned you for almost 25 years now, which is crazy. You'd go a long way. You'd go a long way in erasing what's happened so far this year. You'd go a long way. And it would just, maybe it depends on how it happens a little bit, but yeah, you can't erase it. If Auburn was if Auburn was 3-2, and they had beaten Arkansas and lost to Oklahoma. And let's say the Cal game still happened, but let's say they'd beaten Arkansas and they were 1-1 in the league, and then you upset, you're 2-1 in the SEC. If you win that one, I think Auburn fans would be like, the Cal game would be long forgotten. But yeah, it'd be massive. I mean, Auburn, first of all, Auburn hasn't won there since 2005. That alone. And they haven't even really come close. 2016 was close. Auburn had a better team and went in there and messed around and lost by 6. There's one other game. 2018 Auburn's defense kind of they hung in there a little bit, but their offense was not doing anything that game. And so it felt like it was kind of score wise, it was sort of kind of close, but Auburn offensively couldn't do anything in that game. I mean, you're averaging losing by 18 points a game every time you go to Athens over the last since 2005. So it's just been a bloodbath. So yeah, it would be a miracle. You're talking about winning this game is like Auburn going to the swamp in 2007. You know, that 2007 Auburn team had lost to South Florida at home, Matt Grothe. And trying to think, did they squeak by Mississippi State in a game in early 2007? They had all kinds of issues. They had shuffled on the offensive line. I think they did because I think Cody Burns may have started a game in 2007 because they lost to South Florida. I don't know if he started, but Cody Burns played more. I think maybe against Mississippi State. And I don't remember if they won that game or not. Zach maybe tell me. But it was a bad start to the season, rough start. They went to Gainesville and they were almost 20-point underdogs. I mean, they could have been 20. I kind of want to say they were 17-point underdogs or something like that. At the time, Florida was second. I mean, Florida's coming off a national championship. Chris Leak, Tim Tebow. Or no, I guess 2007 was Tebow. It was all Tebow. And they went in there, had a great offensive game plan early, ran the football. The defense made some massive stops in that game. They win the game 20-17. I feel like that's sort of what this is. A huge underdog against a team that at the time Florida was the premier program in college football. And Auburn was off to a rough start and went in there with a perfect game plan on offense, controlled the ball, scored enough points, made some key stops on defense, got some turnovers, blocked a Florida field goal, and just held on. Now that defense was legit. Auburn doesn't have that kind of defense. 2007, you had Jonathan Wilhite, who's in the NFL, and Pat Sims, who's in the NFL, and Trey Blackman. You had David Iron. You had multiple NFL guys. It's pretty stingy. Will Muschamp was leading that defense, and so the defense was good. Will Muschamp had a great game. So that's what this sort of feels like. I mean, it was a game that, Auburn. Let's see, that season they went to They went to LSU and lost a super tight one that year. So that Florida win kind of turned their season around. They ended up beating Kansas State, but it was massive. That's what this would feel like. Just a game that comes out of nowhere and just complete upset. William says, who do you think has to shine this weekend to pull off a W? Oh, boy. Well, the obvious answer is Peyton. I think the Auburn offensive line, if you want to say a unit, that offensive line, I think, has gotten a tad better. I had some real issues with pass protection early in the year. I thought they did better against Oklahoma. And I think they've done okay in the run game, probably better than okay. I think they've been good in the run game. Pass protections where they've been iffy. They were better against OU. That's where, if you want to beat Georgia, you better be good there. It better start there. If it starts there, you got a chance. If Peyton feels like he's protected, one, you might have some guys open, but two, if he feels like he's protected and somebody's not open, he might have a second to figure out some green space to run to, scramble, get a few yards, move on. But they have to run the ball. If they don't run the football in this game, they got no shot. If they become one dimensional and they can't run the ball consistently, and you want to put them, that's not where you want Peyton Thorne and these receivers is for them to have to air it out and try to win the game. That's not what you want. So it starts with the O-line. If they can come out, be physical, and get some things done. Last year, Auburn ran for 219 yards in this game. Now, a bunch of that was Peyton. Peyton had a really long run, first and second drive of the game. And Peyton probably had 80 yards rushing in that game. One of them set up, I don't know if they scored a field goal or a touchdown. So Peyton's legs are going to have to be a part of that. But nobody rushes for 200 yards in Georgia. Nobody. I mean, I looked it up. It was like just a handful of teams in the last 4 or 5 years have gotten to that number against Georgia. It's super rare. So it's going to start with the O-line. If they can hold their own, Auburn will have a chance on offense to do some things. If they don't, you absolutely forget about it. Taylor says early picks on games down the stretch that you feel good us being able to get a win in out of Missouri. I think as of right now, I think Missouri, A&M being at home, I would lean A&M being your best bet just because it's at home. Out of the two road games, Missouri, Kentucky, I lean Missouri being the easier one, even though Missouri's ranked. And but Kentucky, I don't know what happened against South Carolina, but you look at Kentucky, they almost beat Georgia. And then you look at what they did at Ole Miss. That's a good defensive football team. And Mark Stoops is going to be well coached. So going to Lexington against a defense that's playing well, that's a good defense, that's going to be a rock fight, I feel like. I almost feel like they got a better chance against Missouri. I think Missouri might be the less physical team. So I would lean A&M still with the best chance because it's at home. And when you're playing at home, I mean, that's points, that's confidence. That's still your best bet. After that, I would go Missouri, and then I would go Kentucky, the least, in terms of chances to win, or the worst chance to win that game. But we talked about this on the podcast. What you want to do is you want to come out of Saturday in Athens, and not just the team, but the fans. You want to feel like after that game's over, obviously you want to win, but if you don't beat Georgia, you want to feel like what you saw gives you the right to say, okay, this team is figuring things out, and Missouri, Kentucky, and A&M are absolutely winnable. That's what you want to be telling yourself after the Georgia game. If that game's a disaster on Saturday and you're coming out going, oh boy, we took a step backwards, I don't see how we go to Missouri or Kentucky and win. That's what you don't want to say. You come out of Athens and go, okay, if it was a win, you obviously are saying it. If it's a loss, you go, okay, it's a loss. But I felt like they played similar to how they did against Oklahoma. I felt like they built on something. This team absolutely can go to Missouri and Kentucky and win. They absolutely can beat A&M at home. That's the optimism you want to take into the off week. And for the players, they've been stuck on we're so close. And I know that they want to win, and I know they don't want to hear that. But for one more week, you want them to go into the bye week saying at least we're close. If they win, obviously it takes care of itself, but you at least want to go into the bye week going, we're so close, and you want to take some optimism into that bye week so that they can prepare properly for Missouri and Kentucky. Corey, what percent of run versus pass do you expect to see against Georgia? What do you think they should do to have the best chance? Yeah, I mean, well, it's got to be 65-35. It's no worse than 60-40 in favor of the run. Auburn has to slow the game down a little bit and have success running the ball. You don't want Peyton Thorne throwing 25 or more passes in this game. Not a good recipe. And so I think they could win it being 60-40. It doesn't have to be some 70-30, nothing but run. I mean, they do need to run the ball, but what I thought they did well against Oklahoma, they slowed the game down against Oklahoma while still throwing the football. That's a huge key. You almost want to look at time of possession. If Auburn doesn't turn it over, can they hold on to the ball and make this pretty even in that regard? Can they slow things down, huddle a little bit, get everybody on the same page? I thought that was great against Oklahoma. They need to do more of that. You even heard Peyton Thorne talk about how much that benefited him. And to me, anything you do, if a quarterback comes out in this situation, if Peyton comes out and says, man, that helped me a lot, do more of that. Things that make the quarterback comfortable are good when you're talking about getting the most out of an offense. So I think 60-40. Here's the thing, though. You're going to need big plays in the passing game. I mean, you're just not going to line up and run on Georgia. Now, last year at home, they had 219 rushing, and I don't even know if they threw for 100 yards. But You ran the ball. You had a couple of long runs that set up points. You had a couple of Georgia turnovers that you got points off of. So you didn't need a big passing game. Um, let's say that you only could force one turnover against Georgia, or maybe none. If that's the case, you're going to need to throw the ball. Even if you go 60-40 run, you're going to need some big plays. So if you're going to try to beat Georgia, it can't just be 3 yards in a cloud of dust. So they're going to have to throw the ball. But I think Freeze would love to be 60-40. I think that's where he'd love to live. 55-45 is probably a little extreme. I think he'd love to live 60-40 run, but those 40 being taking advantage of a little bit of the run game you have going on and taking shots downfield and being aggressive. Those 40% can be big plays. So I would try to be 60-40 in favor of the run, and then just trying to complete some balls downfield. But we'll see. Maybe Auburn cannot turn the ball over. That'd be a really good start. 8 turnovers. Georgia hasn't forced a lot. They've only forced 4 turnovers. Do you think Auburn's offense will have improvement on the confusion on their route running? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I hope so. To be fair, like I've talked about this some, it's not happening every play, but it's happening enough in critical situations that it makes it really obvious. And I'm not sure it's something that can get completely fixed in the middle of the season. If you don't know the offense completely through and through, I don't know. I don't know if it's something you can just flip a switch and fix. But it's just both guys have to be seeing the exact same thing. And maybe if you go back and look, there's just a few times. I think the Cal game, for instance, the Keandre Lambert-Smith wrong route that I've talked about at the very end of the game that Peyton Thorne threw a pick on. Peyton Thorne threw a post, kind of a post route. That's a play they haven't run on. And Keandre was confused about what routes were. They haven't practiced that a lot. The one that happened late in the Oklahoma game, the second down pass play that Hugh Freeze got so upset about, that was just miscommunication. That was one where Peyton sees soft coverage, and for whatever reason, Keandre didn't see soft coverage. But that is, I mean, you're talking about a game of inches. They could be told, hey, if that corner is 8 yards off, that's what we're going to call soft coverage. Well, the quarterback has a better view of 8 yards off than the receiver. Receiver can kind of take a quick look and think, if he's not looking closely, he could think he's closer than he is. And so some of that stuff is just razor thin in terms of the margin for error. And so we'll see. I think they'll get better. You know, Cam made a mistake. Just a weird bent his route inside. Can't really explain why he did what he did. And so Cam will get better with experience. Keandre will get better. Remember, Keandre went there in the spring. So maybe he's still picking some things up too. So I do think it should improve. Those are every time they make that mistake, they go into the film room and they can point it out and hopefully fix it. So, and here's the thing, huddling will help that. If they can continue to huddle a little bit, Peyton can make sure and say, hey, remember on this, if you got this, if they're off, I'm going to do this. Like he can communicate a little better when they're having some of these miscues. When they huddle up, I think it plays into so many of Peyton's strengths. When you huddle up and you put all those guys in front of him, he's played a lot of football. I think you help and you aid in his ability to say, hey, remember, if this guy's 8 yards off, I'm coming to you on soft. I'm coming to you on a second. And it might, Keandre might go, oh, yeah, that's right. Cool. We got it. That's another reason I continue to huddle if they can do that. William says, do you think we will see more of Perry Thompson? He's played minimal time and he's still learning the playbook. Yeah, I think he's just still learning the playbook. I've seen him out there blocking. He's a physical blocker. And then I've seen him out there at times in the routes. If he's in there to run a route, it seems like he's in there almost to run a route where they're probably going to run the ball. Like it's a run the defender off kind of route. I'm not sure. There's been some times where he's been an option. He's run a route and it is an RPO. So I guess technically Peyton could pull it, but he's not the first read. So it would be like pull, and it would take a lot probably for him to end up getting there to Perry as an option. But yeah, I think he's still learning the playbook. My understanding is they toyed with redshirting Perry, but I don't think Perry Thompson wanted any part of that. And so I think they're letting him play it out and toss him out there, let him block, toss him out there on a route and run a fly route. Maybe, who knows? maybe he blows by the DB and you get a play or something like that. Try to get him to continue to run. But yeah, I think he's just a true freshman that arrived in the summer. And he hadn't played a lot of ball, so I think trying to figure those things out just takes time. Quick shout out. We are live at Session Cocktail downtown Auburn. We'll go for a few more minutes. It's a little rainy. Misting outside, drizzling a little bit. Less people downtown for sure, obviously being an away game. But come by Session Cocktail downtown Auburn. Check them out. Happy hour 4 to 7. They're starting to get busy in here. So come say hey. Wouldn't it be the most Auburn thing if they were to go to Athens and win? I just think Auburn needs to let Jarquez Hunter eat. Yeah, I don't. I mean, lately it wouldn't be the most Auburn thing because they just haven't gone there and played well. I am waiting for that game. Like, will Jarquez Hunter ever have a game where he goes off in his Auburn career? He's had a couple of good games. If I went and looked up what he's done. Let's see what Jarquez Hunter's done in his career. Like, I mean, remember earlier this year, he had a game, and it was the first game of his career that he had 20 carries. And so let's see, which game was that? That was New Mexico. The New Mexico game this year was the first time he carried the ball 20 times in a game all year. You look at yards, he's got 183 at Vanderbilt last year, 152 against New Mexico this year. I mean, Jarquez has only got 900-yard games in his career at Auburn. 42 games at Auburn, only 9 over 100. Like, Jarquez Hunter is a good back. He's hard to tackle, but he hasn't had he's only had 5 games in his career where he went over 130 yards, just 5. So, part of that's being behind Tank Bigsby. Part of that's being in offenses that have just struggled in general. But he has had very few games where he has gone off for 25 carries for $180 and 3 touchdowns. Like, he hadn't had those opportunities. He's had 1 game where he has 3 touchdowns. He's had 2 games where he's had 2. So of his 42 career games, 39 of them were 1 touchdown or less. I mean, he only scored a touchdown in 15 of his 42 games. So it's just an interesting thing when you talk about letting Jarquez Hunter eat. For the most part, they haven't. It's just very few games where he has just had a Kenny Irons in Baton Rouge kind of game. Very few of those kind of games. I'm trying to look. Last year, 2022 at Alabama, he ended up with $134. That was the game that Auburn just ran the ball with Robbie Ashley, Jarquez Hunter, and I guess 2022 was Tank a senior. They just ran the ball a bunch in that game. But then Vanderbilt, New Mexico, Alabama State, Mississippi State. He hasn't had any big games where he's done that against a big-time opponent. Arkansas, Western Kentucky. I mean, Oklahoma this past week, 97 yards. That's his 10th best performance in his Auburn career. So he just hasn't had a bunch of huge games, and he certainly hasn't had a bunch of huge games against really good opponents. So I don't know if that'll ever happen for him. I don't know if he'll ever bust it out. And part of that, though, is not his fault. Part of that's been offensive line issues that he's dealt with. And obviously, his first year was playing behind Tank. And so maybe he just hasn't been the featured back with an offensive line where he can get the ball 27 times and just go off. I sure would love to see it at some point, though. Yeah. Here for a few minutes at Sessions and bunch of cocktails downtown Auburn. I'm here on Magnolia Avenue. I don't know. We'll see. Auburn's defensive backs have played well. I think they played better than people. I think there's times where Auburn's DBs have given up big plays, but I think for the most part they've played okay in man coverage. I mean, I was looking at it earlier. I was looking at some of the stats in passes defended in the conference. Let me see. I was looking at the SEC stats. Let's see, teams. Yeah, Auburn is 5th in the league in passes defended. 24. I mean, Alabama's way ahead at 35, and they're right there. Like, so Auburn's one of the better teams in the league in terms of passes defended. So I think they've done some good things there. You just can't give up those big plays like they did in some other games that are just costly. Can't give up the costly ones. Those are the ones that certainly stick out. Hey, make sure you go to auburnlive.com and check out the interview we did with Brett Whiteside, executive director of On to Victory. We talked about their campaign to get to $1 million by December. They're trying to do a push for $1 million. They're doing a matching program. So if you're a new member, they'll match you dollar for dollar. If you're an existing On to Victory member and you upgrade, they'll match $3 for every dollar if you upgrade. So they're really trying to make a big push to grow On to Victory. Football is obviously doing well. Basketball is going to have a lot of work to do in the offseason. A lot of work in Iowa. So if you've never been a part of it and you want to maybe donate a little bit and earmark some for basketball, that would really, really help them. So go check that interview out. Go to ontovictory.com and help those guys out a bunch. What you got about DeMarcus Riddick? What you got? I think DeMarcus Riddick needs to have the best game of his career. Is there a chance Auburn gets that? The thing about DeMarcus, we talked about this a little bit on the podcast. He had a great game against Oklahoma. Part of that was game plan, though. Part of that was a really athletic quarterback that Riddick basically just went in to spy. I mean, Riddick's tackles were all spying the quarterback for the most part. I don't think I wouldn't expect to see DeMarcus Riddick continue to play 40 snaps a game. I think it worked against Oklahoma because it was literally go out there on third down, stand in the middle of the field, take a few steps forward, don't get caught up in the mesh, watch the quarterback. He's still learning the defense. And so I let's not get ahead of ourselves. I wouldn't expect him to play 35, 40 snaps a game moving forward, doing everything like against Georgia. I'm not sure how much he plays. Carson Beck, you're not spying him. You're stopping the run. You're being physical. You're run fits, and then you're dropping in coverage. Now, he might get a little bit more action. Maybe they say, hey, you earned a few more snaps. But on the road, first SEC start, Georgia, I could easily see that drawn back a lot and Riddick only getting a handful of snaps because I just don't know that he's there yet. But you'll see him pop back up. I mean, look, you think ahead to Alabama in some spy situations. Think about Vanderbilt with Diego Pavia, maybe some spy situations. So I think there'll be chances for him to still shine this year. But that's really it. You're going to start getting into Brady Cook, Brock Vandegrift, Connor Wiggins. You're going to start getting into some quarterbacks that are not as athletic as what you faced against Cal, New Mexico, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. I mean, Auburn had 4 straight games really of a quarterback that could cause problems with their legs. Really moving out, you're really only going to have Diego Pavia and Jalen Milroe from here on out. And so that'll go down a little bit. So Riddick, I think he'll come back down to earth a little bit in terms of the snaps. But we'll see. We'll see if they can find a way. Maybe if it's just a rush off the edge, 3rd and 9, come off the edge. But you've got Keyron, you've got Jalen McLeod, or blitzing up the middle. But I don't know. He's so athletic. If you can find something he can do that uses that athletic ability on defense in a specific situation, man, it would be nice. Tyler, who has the most receiving yards, KLS or Cam? I actually thought about this. At some point, defenses are going to key on Keandre Lambert-Smith, and they're going to say, okay, that guy is by far their best weapon. They're going to look at the amount of times Peyton Thorne targets him. They're going to look at the fact that Cam Coleman has a couple of drops that have turned into interceptions. He has another drop last week. Like, they're going to look at Cam and go, he's still a true freshman. Georgia's got the athletes probably to not shade. I mean, I think Georgia could pretty much play Auburn straight up in their secondary, but at some point, I wonder if you shade a little bit and you just say you're not going to target KLS, especially downfield. I mean, Dre averages 24 yards a catch. He's 6th in the country in yards per catch. So at some point, you're going to go, okay, Auburn's offense has got a little bit of big playability, but so much of it is this one guy that they feel comfortable. Let's shade and just take that away. But let's shade his safety and take the stutter and go, take the big plays away to him and say, if you want to go, we think Cam Coleman's talented, but we think he's a freshman and we're not sure how confident he is. I'm wondering at what point that happens. Like Georgia, I could see that happening this week where at some point KLS is not going to have a big game. And I wonder if Georgia's that, and maybe Cam can step up and have some of those grabs and have sort of a breakout game at some point. We'll see. We'll see. But I just do think at some point people are going to say, okay, we're not going to let Keandre keep averaging 24 yards a catch. All right, let's take a few more questions. We'll get out of here. Williams says Keldrick Falk sacks. Plus or minus 1.5. I mean, I feel good saying he maybe gets 1. I'm not sure if he gets 2, but let's say he gets 2. He's been one of the best in the country at pressures. I think he's first in the country in pressures among Power 4 teams. I think he's got 21 quarterback pressures. He's been fantastic. Look, Keldrick Falk, Auburn's gonna have to pony up to keep him in the offseason. I'm not saying they won't. I'm not saying any of that. But Keldrick Falk in this day and age in the portal season, he could go anywhere he wants after the season. He is playing that well. He could go anywhere he wants. He could enter the portal and go anywhere in the country. He's playing that well. And you'd have Ohio State or Bama or Georgia, any of these schools would be lucky to have him. I mean, he's played really, really well. He hasn't necessarily racked up. I mean, by the way, I'm sitting here looking at tackles for loss. Jalen McLeod's got 7.5 tackles for loss this year. That's 9th in the country. That is 9th in the country, and that is 2nd in the SEC behind South Carolina's Kyle Kennard. So while Falk's playing well, so is Jalen McLeod. He's playing fantastic football as well. All right, I think we'll call it Session Cocktail Downtown Auburn. What a great place. We love them. They're starting to get busy now. Appreciate their sponsoring the show. See everybody at auburnlive.com. We'll see everybody over there tomorrow for the game. Should be a really good one. Appreciate everybody joining us, and we'll holler at you next Friday. Actually, we might be off next Friday because it's a off week, so we'll probably be off next Friday, and we'll see you guys before the Missouri game.